Grangemouth Community Education Unit, Abbots Road, Grangemouth, remotely on Wednesday, the 6th of September, starting at 6 p.m. In accordance with Section 43 of Local Government in Scotland Act 2003, it has been directed that this meeting will be conducted in such a manner as to allow remote attendance by elected members. The meeting will also be live streamed. Just to ensure a bit of clarity for people that may be the first time on, I'm going to go around the board and ask everybody that here it's in the building and then come remotely for everybody to introduce themselves and give us their designations. First of all, I'll go to my right.
Alf Kelly, councillor for Denny and Banknock.
Provost Robert Bissett, I'm the councillor for the Falkirk North Ward.
Councillor James Kerr, Lower Braes.
Councillor Ian Sinclair, Falkirk North.
I'll go to the officers that's here at the moment.
Thank you, Convener. Ian Henderson, Legal Services Manager and Legal Advisor to the committee. Thank you.
Jack Frawley, Team Leader, Committee Services.
Thank you. Ian Dryden, Unit Manager for Planning, Development Management, Building Standards and Climate.
So that's everybody that's in the Community Education Unit. Now go to remote and ask members if they would just come forward and tell us who they are and who they're representing.
I'll start off, Billy, if that's okay. I'm Councillor Alan Nimmo, Councillor for Grangemouth.
Thank you.
I'm Councillor Jack Redmond for Bonnybridge and Larbert.
Thank you. Gordon.
Hello, I'm Gordon Forrest. I'm Councillor for Lower Braes.
Fiona.
Councillor Fiona Colley for Denny and Banknock.
Jim.
Yep, I'm Councillor Jim Flynn, Councillor for Carsh, Kinnaird and Trice Ward.
Is there any other members that we haven't got to remotely yet? Is that everybody remote? Okay, then we'll go to officers. Catherine, you go in first.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm the Development Management Planning Officer allocated this application.
Other officers like to come forward?
Thanks, Convener. My name is Gary McGregor. I am Engineer and Design Manager. This evening I'll be looking after the flooding and roads aspects of this hearing.
Thank you. Andrew?
Hi, I'm Andrew McDare, Planning Officer in the Planning and Green Space Unit. We're responsible for the local development plan.
Thank you. Any other officers remote that we haven't had introduced yet? Okay then, thank you. That takes us by the introductions. And now is an opportunity for apologies. Any apologies intimated?
No apologies have been intimated, Convener. Thank you.
Any apologies coming from either the floor here or remote? None? Okay, thank you for that. That takes us... Darren, yes, indeed.
I was just to apologise for Craig Russell, Convener, for a roads development control perspective. He's unfortunately got COVID, so I'm standing in for him in that aspect as well as flooding, as per usual.
Okay, thank you for that.
Convener, sorry, just to apologise also for Karen Strang for housing and also from Chris Cox from the Transport Planning Unit.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that takes us to the apologies. Takes us to item 2 on your agenda, which is declaration of interest. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Have we any declarations of interest at this time? No. Unrecorded. Thank you. That takes us now to item 3, which is the predetermination hearing procedures. And for this process, I will move over to the Legal Services Manager, Mr. Ian Henderson, to take us through this process. Thank you, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Convener. And this is what is called a planning predetermination hearing. And predetermination hearings are required where an application, a major application, is considered to be significantly contrary to the development plan. And there's a mandatory requirement for the committee to be able to hear from the applicant and also to hear from parties who have submitted representations before ultimately taking a decision on the application. And it's important to say at this point that no decision on the application will be made at this meeting. And this is, as I mentioned, an opportunity for the applicant and interested parties to be heard before the committee that will, at a later date, take the decision on the application. So in terms of the procedure that will be followed tonight, first of all, you will invite the relevant officer, who is the author of the report that's before the committee tonight, to present the report and summarise the details of the planning proposal. Following that, you would invite the applicant or the applicant's agent to speak to the application that's been submitted by them, and they would have 10 minutes to address the committee on the application. You would then check whether there are any statutory consultees at the meeting, and they would equally have an opportunity to speak to the application in that case for 5 minutes. The next stage is that members of the committee, following the applicant and statutory consultees, there'll be a pause to allow members to raise questions of the applicant, the applicant's agent, any of the statutory consultees, and indeed seek advice on factual or legal matters from the officers in attendance. After that, what you would do is, convener, invite the persons who have submitted representations and who have intimated that they wish to speak before the hearing to speak to their views on the application. And I think the next slide will cover off that such parties would have 5 minutes in order to present their thoughts on the application. The rest of that slide and the next slide covers off points of repetition which can arise in hearing scenarios, and that's to reflect that as convener, the convener may take a view on matters of repetition and curtail such repetition, or indeed invite parties to coordinate in the comments that they're making to the committee. Following that, the applicant or the applicant's agent has a right to reply to any of the points that have been raised to that point before the meeting. That's an important aspect of procedural justice, which is mentioned in a later slide. And following the applicant's opportunity to respond to points, again, there's an opportunity for members of the committee to ask questions of any parties, and equally to seek guidance from any of the officers before the committee this evening. As the penultimate part of the process, members of the committee at that point can raise any matters that they would wish to be covered in the report that will ultimately be brought before Planning Committee. So, convener, if you're good enough to ask members if there are any points they would like specifically covered off, that can be noted, and then the meeting would be closed at that point, but we still have some other slides, I believe. So quite importantly, in terms of procedure at the meeting, the convener is in charge of the meeting. There's not to be cross-examination of parties by each other, and all remarks are to be directed through the convener. And the convener's view is final on any points of procedure. Just to note a point that if anyone that has intimated a desire to be at the meeting isn't here, we're not prevented from proceeding with the hearing session. An important point is, convener, that the convener of the meeting is responsible for ensuring that matters are conducted efficiently, but importantly, as I mentioned earlier, in line with the principles of natural justice, which sit behind the procedures that I've just narrated and the order of these matters. And no doubt you'll be glad to hear that this is the last slide that I'll be speaking to, and it reiterates a point that I made earlier, but I think it's an important point, and that is that no decision is taken on the application at this meeting, and the decision would be taken by the Planning Committee at a future meeting. Thank you, convener.
No, thank you very much. As a process that we have to ensure that we go through it tenuously. Now go to item 4. And Councillor Nimmo, you got your hand up?
Convener, it's just a quick question for Mr Henderson, if I may.
Yep.
Ian, it's been a long time since I've taken part in any of these predetermination hearings, but I remember that I think it was a case that all elected members had to take part previously. I take it that's changed now. Can you maybe just confirm that?
Thank you. I'm happy to do that, Councillor Nimmo. There was, in fact, a change to the planning legislation. It used to require that a predetermination hearing would be held before a committee of the council, but ultimately the decision would be taken by council sitting as full council. So that's why these meetings used to involve all members. There was a change of legislation that allowed the council to take a decision on whether or not it wished full council to continue to take all decisions of this nature, or whether or not it wished the planning committee to take the decisions. So I think from recollection it was around summer, maybe autumn of 2020, that there was a decision taken by the council that it would be planning committee. So in that case, given it's planning committee that's the decision maker, it was planning committee that would attend these predetermination hearings. So hopefully that helps to explain the position. Thanks, Councillor.
Yep, thanks very much for that, Ian. That clarifies things.
Good question, Councillor. Okay, that takes us to item 4 on your agenda this evening. Construction of 33 bungalows at land to the east of 20 Bankview Terrace, Denny Road, Denland Head for Barleyfield Retirement Village. It's pages 5 to 53 in your agenda papers, and the report is by our officer, Catherine Chorley. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Convener. Jack, if you could show the location plan, please, just so that we can see the site. Thanks, Jack. So the application is subject to a predetermination hearing because the proposal is considered to be significantly contrary to the development plan. This is covered in section 2 of the report in a bit more detail. You can see from the site plan there that the site is almost triangular in shape, with a long frontage facing Denny Road with houses beyond, and the remaining sides are bound by water channels with agricultural land beyond that. It measures just under 2 hectares in size and is located in the countryside and is defined as being within the green belt. The application was originally described as 36 residential units, but the applicant has since changed that to 33. The submissions have included various descriptions of the proposed development, including but not limited to the suggestion that it will be for people over 55 years of age. In planning terms, the agent has confirmed that the development will be open to all prospective purchasers, and the assessment should be made on that basis. Jack, if you could swap to the site plan, please. We can just have a look in a bit more detail. So the application is planning permission in principle, but this layout gives an indicative idea of what might come forwards if an application progresses to the matters specified in conditions stage. So the application was also accompanied by detailed supporting information, which is listed at section 1.4 of the report. You can see also that there's been a history of refused applications on the site or parts of the site. These details are provided at section 3, and it's understood that the site has not been submitted as part of previous calls for sites associated with the previous development plan processes. You can see that extensive consultations have been carried out, and these are summarised at section 4. We can provide an update on the response from the Roads Development Unit. However, discussions are still ongoing with transport planning. The Flooding Unit are yet to provide updated comments following confirmation of the proposed use, and Stirling Council have not yet responded to their consultation. Our housing strategy team have confirmed that they would be looking for 5 affordable housing units on this site, and Environmental Protection have confirmed that their view has not changed regarding the noise concerns raised when the application description was unclear. The Roads Development Unit have confirmed that a visibility display would be required at the entrance to the site. This would need to measure 4.5 metres by 90 metres, and where the land is not within part of the adopted road, it should be controlled by the applicant. This morning, we've had further details submitted by the applicant in this respect, and we'll look at those details in due course. So the public representations are summarised at section 6, and the list of representees has been provided separately to members. Since drafting the report, 2 more representations have been received, one from Skin Flats and one from Larbert. Both are noted as being in support of the application, but make no comments on the proposals. National Planning Framework 4 and Local Development Plan 2 form the development plan for the purposes of the assessment of this application. On that basis, the relevant policies from both documents are noted in section 7. And beyond that, the material considerations are set out in 7B, which is on page 50 of your reports. A full assessment of the proposal will be presented back to the Planning Committee at a future date. And that's it from me. Thanks, Convener, and thanks, Jack.
Thank you very much. There's now an opportunity for the agent or the applicant to come forward. You have 10 minutes. Is it going to be the agent, Mr. David Jones?
Yes, Convener. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, if you just sort of give us your full name and who you're representing, and then carry on. You've got 10 minutes. You've been here before. You know the procedure. You have 10 minutes and there'll be opportunities for members to come back. Thank you.
Convener, thank you very much. My name is David Jones and I'm representing the applicant, and in this case, George Russell Construction Limited. My opening statement begins with this planning application in principle is for a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom bungalows and involves the use of non-productive vacant land in central location at Denny Lone Head, close to services, shops and public transport links. The development is targeted primarily at meeting at a maturing older market, but not exclusively so, and is without ownership or occupation age restrictions. Market research highlights an urgent and growing need for smaller, adaptable properties to meet expected demand from an increasing and aging population base. The bungalows will meet all current design requirements of Scottish Government's housing for varying needs, step-free access, wider doorways, accessible height, or electrical switches, sockets, etc., and will also meet the latest energy efficiency-related requirements. The Council's own housing needs and demand assessment identifies a 6% population increase, that's almost 10,000, over the next 20 years, with a projected 13% increase in households due to an ageing population, migration and demographic changes. At 2021, Falkirk had a population of 160,000 persons. Relative to the age structure of the council area, there's a stronger representation of people in their late 40s, 50s and 60s, and it is from this group that will mostly require barrier-free living if they look to downsize or seek a more convenient, sustainable property choice. Demand for purpose-built housing to meet this need will continue to increase if the desire for independent living into older age continues to grow. Whilst there is increasing recognition at both national and local level for barrier-free living, finding appropriate sites with developer interest to meet the Council's 20-minute neighbourhood initiative are limited. This site is ideally placed to meet both need and locational advantages of this planning policy concept. National Planning Framework 4 sets out the Scottish Government's policies and proposals for use of land. Policy 16 states that development proposals for new homes that improve affordability and choice by being adaptable to changing diverse needs and which address identified gaps in provision will be supported. It further notes that the majority of the population want to remain in their own home as they age, preferring mainstream housing, and so accessible and adaptable homes can allow people to continue to live independently. These proposals will provide and sustain much needed residential accommodation within the immediate area and help reduce the shortfall of appropriate housing across Falkirk itself. The site location is sustainably accessible by public transport and within walking distance of several local amenities, including convenience stores, pharmacy, post office, fast food takeaways and restaurants. The proposals will bring back into use an otherwise disused land area incapable of any form of economical agricultural use, whilst meeting a current need for smaller adaptable dwellings. The site is self-contained with clearly defined and limiting physical boundaries, which will be enhanced with further landscaping and its development proposes no threat to the surrounding productive farmland. It can be accessed safely and developed in a way that respects and enhances its surroundings. We have liaised with officers to resolve points initially raised and can provide a site access to meet requirements for layout and visibility, which can be conditioned. We agree with officers that development will have no noticeable impact on the surrounding road network and have agreed to meet all requested contributions for wider road, school infrastructure and affordable housing policy requirements. If members are minded to approve this application in principle, the applicant will work with council and its partners to bring forward detailed proposals at the earliest opportunity, including a construction environmental management plan that will regulate and control all construction operations and associated traffic movements within and out with the site boundary. Thank you, Convener. That's me done.
Okay, thank you very much. Obviously, you know that you'll have an opportunity to come back once anybody that's made submissions and representations have their say. So you got an opportunity to take any notes, Mr. Jones. I think you'll appreciate that.
Thank you.
This is an opportunity for any statutory consultees. Is there any statutory consultees with us this evening who has an opportunity or have an opportunity to speak for 5 minutes in relation to this application? We've none here. I'm going remote. Are there any statutory consultees out there, or can we move on with the business? Okay, thank you for that. This is an opportunity where we invite other persons who have submitted representations, including objectors or supporters, to speak to the terms of their representations submitted in response to the planning proposal. Each party will normally be permitted to address the committee once for up to 5 minutes. So as to avoid repetition, where parties have a similar interest or objection, a spokesperson will be invited to speak on behalf of the group. In these circumstances, the spokesperson will normally be permitted to speak up for 10 minutes. But I believe we've only got 2 people that have submitted representations. And I'm going to ask the first person is Louise Montgomery. Is Louise with us? Louise Montgomery.
Hello, yes, I'm here, yeah.
Okay, can you hear us okay, Louise?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. We have an opportunity now for 5 minutes to come forward with the submission you represented in terms of your objection. Thank you very much.
Hi there, I'm here as well. It's I'm Louise's husband. Do you mind if I speak on behalf of us?
Oh, that's better. But just tell us what's your full name then, just for the
Gary
minutes.
Noble.
Pardon?
Gary Noble.
Gary. Okay. Yeah. Gary Noble. So
Yes.
it's no Montgomery. We don't want to get mixed up because obviously we've
no.
got.
No,
So
I'm
it's
Gary
Gary
Noble. My wife is Louise Montgomery.
That's fine. Okay, Gary, thank you for sorting that out. Gary, so you're going to be speaking for your 5 minutes.
Yeah, of course. That's
Right.
We've just got a couple of points. It probably won't take the 5 minutes, but yes, if that's okay.
Okay, carry on, Gary. We're listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So basically, just got a number of concerns. Probably first and foremost would be to do with the travel and construction of the house. And I know that David did mention, which is much appreciated, that with regards to the house, and there is plans to be looked into and further consultations will be made. But at the moment, it is already quite a tight and busy road that we've got right on the side of the property that's going to be developed. And the concerns would be how that will impact with regards to the roads during the process. But further to that, how long that sort of is going to take. We already know that, for example, parking in these streets and the surrounding areas can be quite tough for that reason. So it was just to get sort of thoughts on that. The second point I wanted to raise is with regards to the field itself. There's quite a lot of like wildlife and other things that just from our view we can see out there. For example, there's various families of deers that we've seen. There's other animals that we've seen kind of out and passing. And our concern would be any development on the land. Does it have a knock-on effect to those kind of the animals and the wildlife in the area? Because the only alternatives are to move left towards the roads where we are or to head towards the motorway. again, I could be misunderstanding based on looking at the map, so I thought I would ask that question. Is there anything else you want to ask before? No, those were just sort of the main points, but as I said, it's based down to the sort of concerns about the existing land and wildlife. Obviously, comments we've heard about, but you sort of addressed the fact there have been previously applications that had been denied. And I was concerned that if they'd been denied before, had the previous issues been dealt with, such as is the land sustainable for building? But yeah, the main one as well being the traffic, as I say, just how long will it take, the impact it's going to have on the local area during that process. So yeah, that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'm sure that Mr. Jones is taking notes, because I've been taking notes, the salient points and questions in your submission. Now, there is a lady who obviously isn't here with us tonight. It's Mrs. McClurg. She's been unwell. Pardon? So we're going to ask her husband's here. Her husband could maybe step up to the table there. And you've got 5 minutes, sir, to make your representation. Thank you. So just to clarify, we had a submission from Jackie McClurg. Unfortunately, she's unwell, and her husband's here to take her place. Thank you, sir. So carry on 5 minutes. Thank you.
I would like to know why this bit of ground has actually came up for planning, why it's not been farmed. Because I've stayed there for 25 years, and that was a arable bit of ground before all the ground was taken out of it, the topsoil was taken out of it, and rubbish put in, and silage bales put in the far side of the park, which I think should have been involved SEPA, if anything. Plus, what's the situation on the roads going to be like, and what's the contribution from this going to affect Denland Head? Is Denland Head going to get anything out of this? I'd be grateful if I could find that question, please.
You've got 5 minutes.
Uh-huh.
So it's an opportunity to take your life, and then there's an opportunity
for
Mr. Jones to come back.
The person on before me was talking about the wildlife. I mean, I look out of the window all the time, and you see deer, everything, ducks a lot flying about. And there's no reason why that should be disturbed for putting houses on, especially the type they're talking about, because it was, first of all, it was a pipe band years ago, and it's been ever since then, it's been something different, something different, something different. I think it's just a lorry, somebody trying to get plan permission on this bit of ground. You know what I mean? So all I can say is it's going to be jam-packed, as the guy spoke about earlier on, the roads. The road is terrible, and now if you see Central Demolition as an example, coming up by there with lorries, and they're struggling now. So what's it going to be like when they start building other things across the road? The road's going to be no-go. And it's really, in my eyes, it's a no-go. Definitely, it's no for me. You know what I mean? But these are the ones that will make the decision on it. You know what I mean? It's what can you say other than that? You know what I mean? It's.
I just want to stay there because. Okay, then it's an opportunity now. So we have two objections there. Both members, I'm quite sure you heard everything that went on there. Obviously, I hope your wife gets better. Mrs. McClurg couldn't make it, but her husband came all the way down here to make sure that our submissions were put forward. We appreciate that. Now, we're going to go back now to the agent, Mr. Jones. Now, Mr. Jones, you've been listening to the two objectors and the points that they put forward. I've been writing them down: road concerns regarding put down by the construction, parking, land, is it some sustainable, wildlife issues. So, Councillor Nimmo, your hand again.
Yes, sorry to interrupt, Convener. I'm just looking for a bit of clarification regarding the paperwork that we have for this application. If you look at the agenda, the applicant is a Barleyfield Retirement Village Limited, But then we heard from the representative, David Jones. He stated he was representing George Russell Construction Limited. Can we just clarify who the actual applicant is?
Yeah, I think probably you can come on, but I would imagine that the name of the application site will be this Barleyfield Retirement Village. But we'll go back to Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, can you clarify that before you come in to answer the submissions by the two objectors?
Yes, convener. Barleyfield Retirement Village or Barleyfield Village would be a business name. The actual applicant would be George Russell Construction. They would be the developer.
Okay, Councillor Nimmo.
Okay, thanks for that, convener.
No, thanks for the question. Right, Mr. Jones, you've heard the submissions for the two objectors. Have you just like to? You don't bring anything new in. You know this. You're only here now to discuss the points that's been raised by the two objectors. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, convener. There's a little bit of overlap between the two speakers that we heard recently. And if I can start with roads concerns, I said in my introductory remarks that we would produce a construction environmental management plan. And that effectively will deal with the construction traffic. It will deal with timescales in terms of how the site will be accessed and a building program associated with that. It would be a detailed work, but clearly that would have to be based on a detailed planning submission. It's too early at this stage to say with any preciseness how that will be dealt with, but at least we will be bringing forward specifics in relation to road traffic and general management issues. In relation to past planning refusals, this piece of ground has not been used for a goodly number of years. We've had a specialist report prepared by the Scottish Agricultural College, who confirms our view that the land itself is beyond economical agricultural use. It would be beyond the, if you like, beyond the pale to consider, or even to think that this particular site could be returned to any form of productive agricultural use. So on that basis, this land is not going to be used for anything. Its location is central to Dennyland Head. Scottish Government planning policy is all about encouraging 20-minute neighbourhoods. This site falls in line with that initiative, and on the basis of being acceptable in terms of the planning policy approach, this is a particularly good site in meeting those general aims. Dennyland Head, in terms of community, what would the community gain from all of this? Well, the 20-minute neighbourhood arrangements was all about helping to sustain existing services and facilities within locations. If we can continue to build up populations in centres where these facilities are already available, that helps to support and sustain the specific services that are available therein. So on that basis, the community will be gaining from this development, and on that particular point, we think it's clearly a very good development. Implications for wildlife, convener. We have looked specifically with environmental colleagues. We've produced specialist reports to check the availability of the site for sustaining existing wildlife. We have left, you've seen from the indicative site plan, there's a significant land area that will be left undeveloped, and on that basis, we believe we can live quite happily with the existing wildlife use of the site. We will leave this in a better state than what we find it in terms of it being acceptable or use for existing wildlife. Thank you, convener.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, Mr. Noble and Mr. McClurg, you got answers to your question. You maybe don't like them, but the fact is that is a submission coming back from the applicant's agent regarding that. It's now going to be an opportunity for members of the committee. And once again, could I say this? We were joined earlier on by Councillor Bowes. Thanks for coming, Councillor Bowes. and I've never had an opportunity to introduce you to the committee. We've just been moving on. It's now the time for the members of the committee. They're invited to question any party heard by the committee or may seek guidance on factual or legal matters from council officers after each of these presentations. So, any questions arising from members just now to either any party? Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Convener, through yourself. Mr. Jones, 3 times actually said that the ground was unable to sustain economical agricultural use. You've got that from the Agricultural College, so I'll go along with that, but it still worries me a little bit for someone to say that when there are so many different uses that agricultural land can be used for, that may not be precluded at this moment, such as pig farming and whatnot. They do not need great quality ground. However, I'll go along with that at the moment, but the previous application had age restriction based into it, and that was what I was most concerned with. As it's a retirement village, can you tell me, are there restrictions on the selling of these properties once they are actually in the hands of the ordinary public? Because in America, there's quite a hard and fast rule that people who do not meet the criteria are banned from buying these properties. And I'd like to see it as open as possible. Thanks.
Okay,
So
you want to try that? Yeah.
Is there a restriction to it?
Mr. Jones.
Convener, no, we're not proposing any restriction in terms of purchase or occupation.
The reason that I'm asking that is it may well be a retirement village in a couple of years when it's built, but the number of people who might buy into that who are not planning to retire there could then turn it into something completely different. It may not stay as a retirement village.
Mr. Jones.
Sorry, Convener. All I can reiterate is that I said in my opening statement, there's no desire to effectively have any kind of ownership or occupation restrictions for these particular developments or this development. Individual transactions in terms of purchases or selling properties at a later stage, I have no indication that will ever change status. These properties will be open to a wide variety of individuals.
Well, in that case, thank you very much, Mr. Jones.
Hey, thank you, Councillor, for your input. Anybody else coming in? Is it Mr. Councillor Redmond? Then Councillor Colley.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. The first one was just the site's quite near the Diageo Bonnybridge Whisky Bond, and there's been some problems with that in my ward, and you'll know as well, Convener, with houses built with white rough cast, and there's been black fungus growing on them. Has the developer taken any sort of cognizance of that?
Good question, Mr. Jones.
It's too soon in terms of having any specifics to lay out before you, Convener. We're not at detailed planning stage yet. We will look at all these specific matters, I think, when we get round to bringing forward these detailed proposals. But it's a matter that we will take into account. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And then 4.3, it was talking about 5 of the 36 homes that would be social rent. Have you, I think it was saying it's an RSG, I'm trying to remember what RSG is called again. Have you approached any housing associations or even the council with regards to them buying the social rent off you, or would you intend to run the social rented houses through Burbank Developments? Or
we haven't focused on any specific individual operator, but I will fully appreciate and understand the terms of the council's affordable housing policy. If and when we get to detailed planning stage, we will have that all tied up so that you can see a full detailed set of proposals laid out before you. We will meet the terms of the council's affordable housing policy.
Thanks, that's interesting. 4.5, it was saying that the housing strategy might prefer some larger homes on the site, maybe 3 or 4 bedrooms. Is that something you'd be open to, or?
Well, we need to look at that in the context of what we bring forward by way of detailed proposals. I can't rule it out at this stage. We're happy to consider options, and if it works in terms of the overall layout, then we'll enter discussions on that basis.
Right. Okay. And then just the kind of one of the last questions I was wanting to ask was, it was saying that there's it might be more for officers, there's a drainage impact assessment that's not been provided, but there's a flood risk assessment. Could somebody just explain what the difference between a drainage impact assessment is and a flood risk assessment? Because you think the flood risk assessment...
Yes, thanks, convener. Through you, Councillor Redmond. So a flood risk assessment basically looks at flood risk. So it looks at three bases of flood risk. So it looks at pluvial, fluvial and coastal. Obviously coastal is not involved here because we're not near the coast. So a flood risk assessment looks at its current flood risk. So we basically ask for the developer and the agent to look at up to a 1 in 200 year storm or a 0.5 annual exceedance probability with climate change. So the flood risk assessment looks at where the current flood extents are at the moment against the SEPA flood maps, and then where that would likely be if the development was to be carried out. A drainage impact assessment looks at surface water drainage and looks in how we would or how the developer would carry out the drainage system to allow for proper drainage of the area and the impermeable surface area of that development, and then tie it into, we have requirements for discharge rates into local water courses. Scottish Water also have discharge rates and requirements to tie into their foul sewers, and the drainage impact assessment ties all the drainage surface water into that, where the flood risk basically looks at the full flood risk of 3 areas. I hope that does that answer your question,
Councillor? That makes a bit more sense. I can see the kind of difference in them. That's all my questions now. Thanks.
Thank you for your input, Councillor. Now go to Councillor Cawley, followed by Councillor Sinclair. Thank you.
Thanks. Obviously, you've said that you're now not going to have an age restriction on it, but if it's marketed as a retirement village of sorts, and given the size of the bungalows and that there is level housing, it is more likely it will be an older age group. So I suppose my question is whether you have had any discussions with local GP practices and health centres, the Health and Social Care Partnership or the NHS about capacity and impact of a fairly significant number of potentially older people, potentially with additional requirements from the development.
Convener, not specifically. We've looked at all the, if you like, the umbrella supporting operations here, and we would intend to tie these down specifically if we move to the next stage by way of detailed planning. It is a relatively small development in global terms. We believe that the consultation process at this stage through the application in principle should suffice in terms to give an overall picture of whether the development would fit quite safely within social care and GP practices, etc. So we're not unduly worried at this particular point. We believe that this development can be accommodated inside existing arrangements.
I suppose a follow-up to that. should you receive the planning in principle and go further forward with the development, would you be intending to have those conversations early as part of your development planning?
Yes, convener.
That's me. Thank you, convener.
Thank you for your input, Councillor Colley. Now goes to Councillor Sinclair. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, convener. If I can get through this without choking, I'll be fine. Excuse me. Just a couple of points of clarification, really. One of my concerns and some of the things that we've heard so far is on construction traffic. I've not heard any definitive answers about staff vehicles or construction traffic themselves, where they would be placed whilst the build was underway if this planning application was to be granted.
Convener, we would intend that our construction environmental management plan would include parking of construction staff within the site itself. We anticipate that document will deal with all these practical aspects.
Okay. Convener, through yourself, just want to ask perhaps for clarification from officers in terms of definitions of land use. I think we'd heard from the agent earlier on that the land hadn't been used or had not been used. Are there specific definitions of land use in terms of what is applicable for this situation?
Catherine, would you like to come in on this one?
Sure. The information we have before us suggests that it's greenfield land, which means it's undeveloped, hasn't historically been developed, and isn't brownfield land.
Okay, is there a definition of natural use for land at all? If I could contextualise that, perhaps?
Yeah.
If there was a natural habitat that had formed over a significant number of years, would that be considered to be a use?
Not in a kind of greenfield, brownfield way, no.
Okay, thank you. I wonder if it's possible for whether it be Catherine or someone else to confirm whether or not there's a water course on the site.
Do you know that, Catherine?
Yeah, I don't know if Jack, would you mind showing us the location plan again and we can have a little look? So I think you can see the blue lines, they kind of represent the water courses that are running around the area. To the north, you've got two coming down into the site. The one that's to the northeast, where Jack's mouse arrow is, that runs along the southern boundary of the site down to the road. And then the watercourse that's to the left of his mouse, yeah, thanks, Jack. I think that one runs down, meets the corner of the site and then runs across along that boundary to Denny Road. If that helps. Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, thanks for that. I wonder, would it be possible then, just for my own purposes here, to have a look at the site location plan for where the development would be? Just to remind myself of that, please.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. It's Councillor Kerr followed by Councillor Bowes. Thank you, Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, convener. Probably none for Councillor Sinclair regarding the site plan. I'm familiar with the area and the site, but would it be in the interest of the committee before it comes back to the committee to have a site visit.
Yes.
So then you go to the committee, then somebody says, let's say a site visit, have that site visit prior to.
Yep.
Thank you, Convener. That would be the intention here, is that
Anyway.
at an appropriate point between this hearing and determination by committee, a visit would be offered to all members.
Okay, thank you very much. My next question, and I think it would have been pertinent that we had somebody for housing here, because who will get us the answer for the question I'm going to ask? Will you do it, Mr. Henderson, or you, Mr. Frawley, to housing, or will you be you, Mr. Dryden?
Yes, Councillor, happy to take any points, queries that are raised tonight.
Right,
We'll
okay.
certainly take those away, and we will certainly make sure those points are covered, obviously,
In the report.
in the report. Yep.
Okay. So my next question is, with regards to these being bungalows, is that the sort of housing that Falkirk Council are looking for going forward? And are bungalows well represented in the area where the application is for, like the Denny and Denler Head and Backnock area?
I think that's been noted.
Councillor Sinclair asked the question I was going to ask about the purpose of that, and I'm happy with the answer that he received, Convener. I've got a question at the end. I'll wait till everybody else is.
Okay. It's Councillor Bowes. Sorry for keeping you waiting so long, sir.
Yeah, fine, Convener. As much as Councillor Forrest accepted the use of the land, is it possible to get that in writing from because at the moment it's been said that the use of the land is poor for farming. I know there's various standards on that, and as much as I do remember Mr. Jones from a previous application, can we make sure we get that in writing? There is a couple of worries. I mean, to be honest, it looks like a decent development in the area. However, there is a couple of worries about it. And I think the drainage, when you've got two watercourses coming in under this section of land, I deal with enough properties that have got water running underneath them, and I know the problems that can occur from that. So I think that's going to be very, very important as we go forward to determine this. It looks as if it's a bit of a flat plain with in a slight part of a valley. Just looking at the image that Catherine put earlier on, where the grid lines get closer to the right hand side, which tells me it's at the bottom of a hill, and that's potentially concerning, and that you're going to get potentially get a flood of water again underneath these properties. It's something I think we need to consider on this one in particular. But I think it's fine to have statements about where the land is, and I appreciate Mr. Jones will be reading whatever he's got, but if we can get that in writing, I think that would be helpful for the future.
That's a very good point, Councillor Bowes, in relation to the condition of the ground. I think some of the issues that's been brought up, I think the benefit of a site visit maybe answer quite a number of them, and I think that's going to be important. So, you can want to come back in, Councillor Bowes? Yeah.
Sorry, Convener, can I just add, because I have read something about potentially this land was used for dumping of materials. If it's not been able to use for land for farming, is there land contaminated then? If it's been used for dumping of materials, can we get that checked out as well? Because it's I read something today about somebody having scraped off the topsoil and there's a load of stuff being dumped, and it was used as a tip basically. So therefore, is it contaminated land? Which I think I would like to know as well.
Well, I'll go straight back to Catherine on this, the planning officer. Catherine, have you got any update for us in relation to the ground being contaminated in any way?
I can go back to the environmental protection team and come back to you.
Yep.
In their consultation response, they did recommend a condition to deal with contamination, but I'll ask them if they have any specific history of contamination on the site.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at this stage? Councillor Bowes, did you want back in?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. It's just that you seems to be, I don't know whether it is, it's maybe the colouring, but you seem to be off a red and pink there at the moment.
It's just because I'm in my car and I've got a wee bit of a cough.
Councillor Kerr, you want to come back in?
Yes, convener. And it's regarding the timescale for this. This will be your 4th PDH. And as I keep on saying at every meeting, it's people's lives we're dealing with. And whether it's a for or against, I'm sure that the people involved would like to get an answer as soon as possible. So will there be a timescale on this to come back? Or will be a timescale?
Well, I think we all recognise maybe the frustrations of how things have been going on, because we've got quite a number that's outstanding, not just PDHs but LRBs. One of the main issues, obviously, MPF4 and taking cognizance of that before they come back to committee. Mr. Frawley, our colleague here, has been working on a programme to bring forward all these issues and bring them back to committee as soon as, and I think members will receive some information in the not too distant future about a catalogue of these that have been lying for some considerable time. We all appreciate it. Councillor Kelly and myself has been in discussion with Mr. Frawley in relation to the issue, but obviously it's not just been down to obviously the council here.
No.
It's just been the fact is that there's so much information that's coming back, especially with that MPF4. So we take cognizance of what you say, and we're all well aware of it. Councillor Kelly, you want to come in at any stage? No, Mr.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in, convener. I think Councillor Kerr has raised some points of relevance there, and I think certainly each case has to be determined on its own individual merits. But you're correct, there are some applications, as you're aware, that are ongoing. So we obviously can't go into the details, but there are similar patterns there, and it's down to clearly the emerging implications of National Planning Framework 4, as you've heard this evening, is now part of the Statutory Development Plan, and particularly Policy 16. And you may well be aware in the wider press as well that there has been some debate as it happens about the interpretation of Policy 16 and the relevance of that. And so clearly a decision was taken by another authority, as you might be aware of that as well, which was issued by Scottish ministers. That is now subject of a challenge, which complicates matters further. So certainly, clearly having regard to that, and certainly the planning team and in discussions with our legal colleagues just now and on what advice we can give you, because I think it's important that obviously we bring back to you a report for your consideration, which will have a full assessment, but we have to have regard to the important issues regarding delivery, and it is a wider national challenge just now, but it's certainly something we're going to consider, and we certainly are keen to try and bring back the reports as quickly as possible. But I think what's more important is to get, obviously, the best advice to you and the correct advice. And at this point in time, there is certainly some ongoing discussions and debate about that advice, but we'll endeavour to try and bring those back as soon as we can. So regrettably, I can't give you a definitive timeline, but we are mindful of the points that you raised, which are valid, but equally we have a wider national issue, which is relevant to a certain degree, and we have to try and interpret that into a locational context for Falkirk.
Thanks, Mr. Dryden. I'm quite happy with that. So what we're saying is we would like to get the findings of this court case, because a lot of things hinge on this. Because I've got constituents saying to me what's happening, and if I can go back and say, well, there's a legal challenge here, we need to wait, I'm happy with that. But it's they're piling up. That's 4 major developments that we've got sitting, and I understand that the new NPF4 has, through obstacles in the officer's way, but as long as I can relate that back to my constituents. Thanks, Mr. Dryden. Thanks, Convener.
No, I think you can be assured that Councillor Kelly and me have been in close dialogue with Mr. Frawley in relation to bringing these forward, because it's a matter, as you said, it's a matter for everybody. We don't want them all piling up. We want to get them dealt with and get decisions making one way or another. So, Councillor Flynn, did you have your hand up, sir?
I did, Convener. Yeah, thank you very much. It's just really, I'd like to revisit a couple of points raised by fellow councillors, and that is this a retirement village or isn't it? Because the opening, agenda item says retirement village. In the paperwork, it mentions retirement village, and Mr. Jones said, no, it was going to be open to all. Now, Councillor Colley quite rightly raised the concerns that if it was for older people in a retirement village, we need to take care of the healthcare provisions in the area. But if it's open to all, I have equal concerns that if it's different age groups, you could have people coming in, couples in with children. So we've got the concerns related to schools and school provision, nursery school provision, etc. So I'd like, before it comes to the committee again, clarification, because is it going to be marketed as a retirement village or isn't it? Is it open to all or isn't it? Because at the moment, the papers say one thing. Mr. Jones has, widened the goalpost slightly, which is fine, but we just need clarification, Convener. Thank you.
Pauline, I think what we'll do is we're going to go back to Mr. Jones on this issue. Mr. Jones, you heard Councillor Flynn. He simplified the issue and simplified the question for you. It's headed in the paperwork. It's east of 20 Bank View Terrace, Denny Road, Denley Head for Barleyfield Retirement Village. So can you maybe definitively tell us, is it going to be a retirement village?
Convener, the style and type of properties that we're putting forward are going to be 1 and 2 bedroom units. In themselves, they're not designed to cater for anything other than the mature age group. Now, whether they be in the 40s, 50s, 60s plus is open, but the feedback that we're getting in terms of, if you like, market surveys and possible purchases is that this type of unit seems to be appealing to a much wider client base than what we had originally envisaged. Hence, we're not setting any if you like age limit in terms of purchasing arrangements. We feel it would be much better to keep it open at this stage and reflecting those people who are interested in smaller units. And on that basis, we would like to proceed. Whether we call it a retirement village, whether we call it Barleyfield Village, is a matter for future discussions. But on that basis, that the information that we've received from our marketing people, this is how we'd like to push forward with it, and this is the proposal that we're putting to you.
With the greatest respect, Mr. Jones, we're dealing with an application before us tonight for a planning predetermination hearing for 20 Bank View Terrace, Denny Road, Denley Head for Barleyfield Retirement Village, and that's in the mindset of the committee. But I'm going to go to Mr. Dryden, our top planning officer, to give us his clarification on the question coming from Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Convener. And I think obviously tonight's meeting is a predetermination hearing, so we're not really discussing the merits of the case before us, but I think the points of clarity have been well made. I think we've heard from Mr. Jones this evening, so what we will want to do as officers now is to take obviously the points away from this evening's meeting, and in particular this aspect, to get that clarified from Mr. You've heard what Mr. Jones has said, and obviously we'll have regard to that as part of our assessment consideration, and particularly you'll see in the actual report before you as well, paragraph 8 on page 51, human rights and equality assessment, we'll have regard to that, as it says, and we'll consider that with regard to that, and we'll come back and give you the advice as it stands. But you have certainly heard tonight, clearly there's no plans to put any restriction as such, but clearly there has been a statement made that the type and nature of the housing being proposed, albeit in principle, does suggest, according to the applicant, it will be a certain person, but it's not to say that it will be exclusively for those people. However, what we will do, we will also take advice from our housing colleagues, which we're having an ongoing dialogue with, and we will ensure that we'll have in a report that will be covered, and we'll also make sure that we'll have housing in attendance at the committee when we bring it back at a future date.
Just a bit of clarity from probably Mr Jones, and it's been highlighted by Councillor Flynn and yourself, convener, regarding Barrafield Retirement Village. But what nobody's mentioned at the end is limited. So is that's not actually saying it's a retirement village, that's saying it's a company that the name's put forward. Is that correct, Mr Jones?
Yes, convener, that it would be a company name.
Right. That's a good point.
Convener, could I just ask that?
Provost Bissett, thank you, sir.
It's for Mr Guest. That explanation was about as clear as mud for me anyway. So I think we need that needs to be clarified. I'm still no. If you're putting forward an application, it should be really clear and concise, I think. So hopefully by the time we get to a planning meeting, it's clear. I just wanted to ask Mr Guest about the land itself. Oh, Mr Jones, Mr Guest, aye. Mr Jones. Mr Jones. Sorry about that. Start again. About the land. Now, clearly you're putting forward an application, so have you done any investigations into the land to see if it's contaminated or not?
We have done some provisional or preliminary work, convener, and we're not aware of any specific contamination matters. We appreciate what your environmental health people have said, and that if we are moving, or if we are fortunate to move to the detailed stage, we will carry out detailed site investigations as we would in any circumstance. So that should be covered, or can be covered by a planning condition if we move to detailed stage.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, convener.
Okay, thank you for that. Item 10 is members of the committee may identify any other planning issues that they wish to see addressed in the report to the meeting of council that will consider the application. I think Mr Henderson's been taking a number of these and noting them, and I'll pass over to you, Mr Henderson, just to give us your thoughts.
Thank you, convener. I'll try to summarise what I've noted so far, and if I've missed anything out, if members could come in and we can take a note of the items that they would like covered in the report. The first matter I had noted here was raised by Councillor Kerr, and that was a question around bungalows and whether that's of a nature of housing that Falkirk Council would be encouraging, and the representation of such houses in the local area. The next matter was, I think, raised by Councillor Bowson, indeed I think a number of the members, around drainage and the drainage impact, and also the use of the land. And there was a request that some information be obtained from the applicant on the use of the land that could be referred to by officers in the report. That covered a question about materials that may have been removed from the site, and the question of any potential land contamination, and I'm sure officers could cover that off in the report also. And we had another question in relation to gaining clarity and conciseness on the intentions around how the development would be occupied, and whether or not it was a retirement village as such, and if there were any restrictions that would be imposed on occupancy of any of the houses on sale and future use. I think these are all the points that I had noted to this point. Councillor Sinclair's got his light on.
Thank you, Convener. Yep, I have some concerns over some of the images that I've seen of the site in particular. It looks to me as if there's a kind of natural wetland habitat has kind of formed over a number of decades, presumably. My concern would be that, and amongst that, we heard tonight about ducks and deer. My concern would be that there may be protected species on site in that sense. And I'd like to see a bit more about that. I think NPF 4 puts a lot of focus on environmental aspects, loss of biodiversity and so on and so forth. I'd be concerned that we're going down this route with this particular site, given it's a greenfield site. And just to also stress the comments about topsoil being removed and there being infill in there of some type of rubbish. I think it will be really important to get some information and clarification on any potential contamination, but also as to what is in there. It may not be contaminant, but it may be something that might not be au fait, shall we say.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's fine. I'm sure Mr. Henderson adding that to the list.
Thank you, Convener. Maybe open to my planning colleagues to double check that that's information that should be available in a PPP for the reports that will come before committee.
Yes, I think certainly it is pertinent within the legislation, particularly the planning permission and principle, that you can ask for further information and clarity, to go beyond that. And so therefore it is relevant to what's been asked tonight. Can certainly be sought and checked, either with a combination of the applicant and also our own colleagues and the experts within in-house to check that out.
Okay. Councillor Kerr?
Can you just add to that, Mr. Henderson? My colleague, Councillor Flynn, mentioned about education. So if it's going to be normal housing, how does that affect Denal Head School, Denny High School, regarding capacity? And also, Convener, as Mr. Dryden's already alluded to, the planning permission in principle is very vague. We could be asking for developers or applicants to carry out expensive work where if it gets refused, it's money wasted. I'm only going with personal. Councillor Edmund mentioned about flood risk. I bought a house in California. It cost me $5,000 for a flood risk assessment. If California's getting flooded, the rest of the folk it's knackered. And it cost me $5,000 to get that before I could even go forward with it. So that's very vague, and I'm sure either way, once a decision is made, either way, the right information would come forward at the next stage. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that ties this evening up. I'd just like to thank everybody for coming and to thank the two objectors for submissions, Mr. Noble and for Mr. McClurg coming on behalf of his good lady. Other than that, thanks to all members and thanks to all officers and a safe journey home. Thank you very much. The meeting is now closed.